Coding. Yes, so welcome to our service webinar. This will be the one for December, and then we might have one more mid-December. But here, pleased to welcome Richard. And I've listened to Richard in the webinar, I've listened to Richard in the BitCons. When it comes to presentations, only very few people can go deeper on how we can do presentations. And I know I do presentations at least one a week. I'm here to listen. So please do listen and drop chat boxes on what you can learn from the takeaways. And at the end, stay until the end. At the end, there'll be, as always, there'll be 3 questions. Whoever listen carefully, take notes. At the end of the day, we have answered the 3 questions. You will have access to one or more of our Scribble courses as well. So again, as a bonus, listen to the presentation. And if anybody, any one of you who has joined today have learned something, and if you apply that in your presentation, and if you come back and tell me you have done this in your presentation, we will host you as a guest in one of our Office Hours webinars. So welcome. And again, people who will be listening that on demand. I know when we have 35 people, 40 people who join, there'll be 3 times more who listen in 48 hours, and then another 100 plus will listen in weeks time. So if you are in, thank you for joining and listening to. Here we are, Richard. It's all yours now.
Wonderful, Bhaskar. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Welcome into the session. Bhaskar said we're going to be talking today about presentations. And yet, when you say presentations, particularly things related to PowerPoint, I often like to ask a question, which is, what is it about most presentations that's so, what's the word, bad? Most presentations are, let's be honest, pretty terrible, and your audience is sat there wondering why they're bothering. There's even a term for it. We call it death by PowerPoint. Now, one of the major contributors to death by PowerPoint is using slides that spell out what you're trying to say. See, the problem is that the words you see and the words you hear are all processed in a single part of the brain, something called the phonological loop. And that means that it's virtually impossible for people to read and listen at the same time. You get an interference effect going on, which is one of the underlying reasons why your audience is left feeling a bit confused, not what you want in a presentation. The other issue you face is that people just can't resist trying to understand what's in front of them. So what tends to happen is, well, this. And because of this, you get that. So you've all read the slide, you just want to move on. You don't want to listen to me talk about it some more, but inevitably presenters will desperately try to add some value to whatever War and Peace is up on the slide. And that means that one or two things is going to happen. Either you're going to get ignored, which isn't great, or you're going to become really irritating, neither of which you particularly want. So the answer, as I hope is obvious from what I'm showing you here, is to get rid of text and bullet points in presentations. That's for documents. And instead use visuals, diagrams, and even animations that explain and reinforce your messages. Critically, if you can synchronize that up with what people are hearing from what you're saying, then you can encourage something called dual coding of information, where you get a beautiful sense of integrated visuals and narrative, and it all comes together in a wonderful and magical and successful environment. So that's the setup for today's session. The idea of trying to create more visual presentation content that supports what you or what the presenter is saying. And generally speaking, most people are happy with that as a concept. The problem is, how do you do it? And so for the rest of the session, I want to go into PowerPoint and do a whole lot of stuff live with you to look at different ways that you can improve the quality and the effectiveness of your presentations. If you have any questions, any comments at all, please do feel free to type in the chat as well. This session is about helping you to get the most from PowerPoint. I've got a whole lot of stuff prepared, but if there are things that you would like to be able to do, please do let me know, and I'm happy to go off and do other bits and pieces. As I said, really flexible. The first thing that I thought might be sensible to talk about, though, is just to do some good level set, to talk about boosting your productivity when it comes to using PowerPoint. So there are a whole lot of keyboard shortcuts that I would encourage you to use. If I just go into edit mode here in PowerPoint and just look at some really simple stuff, seemingly so anyway. Like, for example, how do you create a square in PowerPoint? Well, for most people, you'd say, well, you go to the Insert tab on the ribbon and you've got the Shapes gallery here, and then you can find a square. Absolutely. Except there isn't a square. There are more rectangles than I thought mathematically possible, but no squares. So most people will choose this basic rectangle here and then guess. The problem is that you're never going to get it exactly right. So instead of doing that, if you press and hold the Shift key when you're drawing a shape, what now happens is you'll get a perfectly squared version of the shape. So a rectangle, if I press and hold the Shift key, becomes a square. Or if I were to start to draw an oval, for example, press and hold the Shift key, and that now becomes a circle. So the Shift key is really useful for creating content to make sure that it's nice and neat and even. It's always this 1-to-1 aspect ratio or a perfect square. The Shift key is also really useful when you're moving content as well. So if you click on an object in PowerPoint, you can, of course, drag it anywhere on the slide. But if you press and hold the Shift key, what you'll do is lock either the horizontal or vertical position, meaning you can only move it left and right or up or down. So it's great to be able to make sure that things are lined up. So here, for example, I can move this up, but ensure that the gap stays the same with that black box there. So the Shift key is really useful for creating content and moving content. The Control key is also really useful as well. I'm sure you all know the keyboard shortcut for copy paste, which is Control C and Control V. Why is it that it pastes it just to the right and just below the original object? In 20 years of doing this, I've never once wanted to be there, and now I've got to click and drag it somewhere else, which is annoying. So instead of that, I would use something called the copy drag. If you press and hold the Control key, your mouse cursor changes to a little plus, and then you can click on an object and drag it somewhere else. If you now let go of the mouse button and then let go of the Control key, you'll have dragged a copy of that object somewhere else on the slide. And in fact, if you use the copy drag, the Control key, combined with the locking position, the Shift key, then you can do a copy drag in line with the original, and now you've got this nice, neat structure so that super quickly you can create the slide sequence that you want. So there are a whole load of keyboard shortcuts in PowerPoint that are well worth taking a look at. And what you'll see here is a selection of them that we think are particularly useful. So this is the stuff for PC, but there's also a similar kind of thing for Mac as well. And you can get this from the Bright Carbon website if you like, so I can put a link into the chat there if anyone wants to download it immediately. But I should also say that after today's session, what I'll do is send you all a PDF guide, a step-by-step instruction that allows you to go through all the different techniques that we'll cover today, and also has links to really short video tutorials, like 2 or 3 minutes. So by all means, watch the recording and you can see all the stuff that we do that's kind of more specific to what you're interested in, but you can also see those video recordings and the step-by-step guide if you want to as well. And I hope that sets the session for the tone rather for the rest of the session, like giving you tips and tricks and ideas, things that you can use. As I said, by all means, ask questions. Please do type in the chat, but also I'd like to give you a sense of what's possible in PowerPoint, to go through quite a few things to inspire you as to what might be available to you. And then you can pick and choose the things that are going to be appropriate for the things that you're doing in PowerPoint. So keyboard shortcuts, as I said, well worth looking at. These are the ones on Mac. These are the ones for PC. This will be in the PDF guide that you'll get after the session. So shortcuts are really valuable, and there are loads more, by the way. These are just the ones that we think are particularly useful, and it's a good cheat sheet. There are other functions in PowerPoint that also help you to boost your productivity. For example, say you've got a slide that you're using to talk about the strategy for the next year. You know, we're planning our journey ahead together. It's a good time of year to do it. You come up with a slide that sets out nice and clearly exactly what it is you want to say. This is the key structural elements of the presentation. You've got this idea of a road in the background for the journey ahead, 3 key points. It works really nicely. You are proud of it, and rightly so. And then, you know, partly to show off, but also because you value her opinion, you send it to your boss and she comes back and says, oh yeah, I like it. I've just made a couple of changes. Can you tidy it up? And what you get back is this. And you think, oh, good grief. How long is it going to take to fix this? Well, fortunately, the answer is just a couple of seconds by using something called the alignment and distribution tools in PowerPoint. You can use these tools to line objects up relative to each other really easily. To start with, I'm going to select just these black circles here and then go to the Home tab in the ribbon. Over on the right-hand side, you'll find this little yellow and white box icon here called Arrange. And if you click on that, all the way down to the bottom is a thing here called Align, which gives you half a dozen different options to allow you to line objects up relative to each other. So if I were to choose Align Left, for example, it'll align all of the objects up to the leftmost portion of the leftmost shape. If I were to go back and go to the Home tab and Arrange and Align, and then do Align Top, it lines them all up to the topmost portion of the topmost shape. So you can super quickly line things up and it's all nice and neat. The other issue that you have is that, this is overlapping, the spacing here is different, it's still not very neat. But if you go back to the Home tab, Arrange on the right, Align down at the bottom, there are two more functions here called Distribute that allow you to evenly space the objects across the slide. And if I choose Distribute horizontally, it'll now evenly space them so the spacing is the same between them. Now, to me, these are the single most useful content creation tools in PowerPoint, and yet they are buried in a submenu of a submenu of a submenu, which I just think is ludicrous. So instead of having to go through that, I have customized my PowerPoint using something called the Quick Access Toolbar. Now, my PowerPoint should look pretty much the same as yours. This is the latest version in Office 365, but it's been the same design since 2010. The one thing that might be a bit different, though, is that I've got this row of icons down here at the bottom. This is called the Quick Access Toolbar, and you can use it to add any functions you use on a regular basis to it. So if you are always using the alignment tools, for example, as I am here, I've got them there front and center on the slide. Now, if you've never used the Quick Access Toolbar before, you've all got it, but it's going to be up in the top left-hand corner of your screen. It's going to have just a few icons like save, undo, redo, that kind of thing. So just up here. The first thing that I'd recommend you do is to bring this down closer to the slide. So you can do that by right-clicking on any of those white icons and choosing Show Quick Access Toolbar below the ribbon. That now brings it down closer to the slide. It minimizes mouse mileage, but it also extends it the full width of the screen as well. So now you've got a full area that you can add functions to. And then simply a question of adding any things that you're using regularly. So if you're always using the new comment function, for example, well, you can go to the Review tab on the ribbon, right-click on New Comment and choose to add to Quick Access Toolbar. Or if you're always using the draw tools, maybe you're inking or something, you can right-click on that and you can choose to add that to the Quick Access Toolbar as well. So all sorts of ways that you can add these functions nice and easily, the things that are personal to you. And what I've done is gone to the Arrange tools here and Align, and I've right-clicked on each of these and chosen to add them to the Quick Access Toolbar. Now, if you want, and if it helps you, you can actually download the Quick Access Toolbar that I have here, either for PC or Mac. Again, I can put a link in the chat there for everyone if you'd like, and that just saves you a bunch of time. And it's probably useful, but I would say that you should absolutely go through and customize it. If you never use animations, then get rid of these and replace them with something else that's going to be useful to you. And so once you figure out the Quick Access Toolbar and having all these functions right there rather than going through submenus, I go back to this and look at this stuff here, and I can just select this and do Align Center, select that and do Align Center, and then select all of these and do Align Top and then Distribute, and it's done. In literally a couple of seconds, you're tidying up these slides. So really quick and really easy. So there's keyboard shortcuts to boost productivity. There's functions in PowerPoint to boost productivity, like the alignment tools, but you can also get add-ins. And if you will forgive me a brief shameless plug, I'd like to talk about an add-in that the company that I work for, Bright Carbon, have created, and it's called Brightslide. I feel okay to talk about it because it's available completely for free, and you can download it from the Bright Carbon website and do with it as you like. So Brightslide appears as a new tab in the ribbon up here, and it's got all sorts of design productivity functions in here, again, designed to boost your productivity. If we go back to this kind of slide here and look at alignment and distribution, like I've got this setup here where I can do Align Top and Distribute, that's great. But these bits here, I want them to line up to the circles. Now, the circle in the middle, the clear circle here, is in the right place. If I were to select the black circle first, this is an opportunity to boost engagement here, by the way, so get ready to type in the chat. If I were to select the black circle first, and then the line, and then the text box. And if I were to do align center, what is going to happen? Are they all going to be lined up? I think we probably agree they will be. But are they going to be lined up under the circle, or is the circle going to move? What do you think? Type in the chat. Under the circle or move the circle? It's going to move the circle. And that's really annoying because I don't want to move the circle. The circle was in the right place. I want all of these bits to come in underneath it. And so that's one of the huge frustrations that we have with the alignment tools. And so in this Brightslide add-in, we've modified how they work. So over on the left-hand side, you've got all these alignment tools here, and you've also got this drop-down that allows you to choose how they work. So you can choose to align to the selected objects, but you can also choose to align to the thing you selected first, or to the guides or to the slide. And because I hate submenus, we've also got keyboard shortcuts for these things. So I can press and hold the Shift key, and that will then toggle on this Align to First tool, which means that I can now go to my Quick Access toolbar with the regular standard alignment tools, press and hold the Shift key to activate the Brightslide add-in, and now when I do Align Center, they line up under the circle. And so now I can use the Quick Access toolbar and just toggle the Shift key on and off to be able to line everything up exactly where I want. And so again, it's now taking just a couple of seconds rather than all of those frustrating things that you typically have when you're dealing with the alignment tools and a really disjointed slide. A couple of other super quick things that might be useful, like here, for example, we've got a whole lot of icons. They're great, but they're all different sizes. I can select them all, go to Brightslide and choose match size, and it'll now make them all the same size. They're still scattered all over the place, which is annoying. So we've got a tool here called Distribute to Grid, which will bring up this function here, which allows you to choose how many rows or how many columns there are, how far apart they're spaced as well. So you've now got this nice setup, which works really nicely. Here we've got a nice supermarket layout where we've got Neil there, which is great. And then also we've got Zod, and you think, hang on, no, it's the wrong way around. It's Neil before Zod. So what we're going to do is select both of these, go to Brightslide and choose Swap Objects, and now they flip over. Let's imagine you've got a timeline that you're setting up here with kind of some good chevron process elements, and then someone wants to put a picture in the background. It's like, now this detailed text doesn't really come through as well. So you decide to put this into the chevrons. That's good. Let's kind of resize these here like that, there. And then you realize that you've resized this to be able to get the text right. But now to resize these is really awkward. There are loads of shapes in PowerPoint that have these adjustable grab handles, but you can never get them all to be exactly the same. So what we've got in Brightslide is an adjustment painter where I can now copy the adjustments from this and I can paste it onto there so they're all consistent. Here we've got another slide that allows you to create more seamless animation elements as well. So here I want all of these disks, for example, to talk about maybe local storage going into a cloud-based tool. So I can open up animations and I've got them all on a motion path, but it's just a standard motion path going up. I've got one of them here going to there, but I want them all to be able to move in. Well, what I can do is use Brightslide to be able to say, right, I've got one of them going to the right place. And so what I now want to do is go to Brightslide and animations and utilities, where I'm going to choose to match the endpoints. And now they'll all go to that position there nice and neatly and easily. And they'll all come up and we can say, right, and we're going to consolidate all the storage to one global source, for example. So just a brief demonstration of some of the things that are possible. And as I said, you can download this completely for free. I put a link in the chat there. If you are a power user in PowerPoint or aspire to be one, this will certainly help you on your way with all sorts of different functionality that's available. It's not anything that will be proprietary, so you can use this to create your own presentations and then send them to other people, and they will be a standard PowerPoint presentation. All it's doing is helping you to boost productivity by automating a lot of standard processes in PowerPoint. So it doesn't change the file at all. It'll all still work exactly as you want it to. So it's definitely worth considering things like keyboard shortcuts, things like productivity tools, and things like add-ins to be able to boost productivity even more. Right, so any questions, again, let me know. Happy to answer them as we're going through. Please do shout out and type in the chat. But I thought now might be a good time to move away from core content creation stuff to look at what is it you would actually do. I talked at the start about the idea of using more visual slides. And of course, one of the obvious things that you can use visuals for, or one of the obvious visuals you can use rather, is imagery. So here, for example, we're talking about a project roadmap, a road in the background to kind of give that sense of movement and the representation there, but also highlighting elements on the image to give a sense of that we are moving along this journey. Here's another one where we're talking about elevating to new heights. So let's get a picture that gives that sense of elevation and bring stuff off it. Here we're talking about increasing trends over time rather than just using a bar chart or bullet points, for example. Maybe let's use the advertising boardings from a subway station and replace those with the numbers so you get this sense of increase over time as well. So you can use images in all sorts of wonderful ways. And there are lots of great places to get images. So you've got websites like unsplash.com, also pexels.com, pixabay.com, and everypixel are all really great websites to get beautiful, high quality imagery that you can use however you like in your presentations. They're available for commercial use, completely for free. For iconography, if that's your style, you've also got websites like the Noun Project and material.io, where again, you're getting really great high quality iconography that you can use how you like. As I said, I've gone through those quickly, but there is a PDF guide that we will send you. If anyone wants to screenshot this, you can do. This is one of the pages from the PDF. And this is 9 or so different websites that you can go to for these really beautiful high quality images. So Pexels, Unsplash, Everypixel, Pixabay there, and a few others too. So take a screenshot of that if you want to, but that's also in the PDF guide that you will get after the session. And then for iconography, there's also this one here as well. Again, this is another one from the PDF guide where you've got the likes of Illustrio, Materials, Material.io, the Noun Project, and so on. So a whole load of them that work really well. So you can go to these sites and you can get all this stuff and it works really nicely. But you can also, amazingly, do all of this in PowerPoint. If you go to the Insert tab on the ribbon, towards the left here is this little duck and leaf motif called icons. And if you click on that, what you get is a pop-up window which shows you a whole load of icons that you can now choose from to add into PowerPoint. And you can scroll down and you can look, but there are thousands of them, so it'll take a while. Or you can go across the top here where there are different categories, or you can just do a search. So I can search for, say, rocket, for example, and it will come up with everything that's relevant. Choose the one that I want, insert it, and now I've got an icon of a rocket. What's nice about this, though, is that it's not just a picture, it's a vector graphic, which means that you can make it as large as you like, and you don't get any kind of pixelation. It's all nice and neat and smooth. You can also treat it just like you would a regular shape, so you can change the color of it as well, and so you can better match your brand and your style. You can also get photos from PowerPoint. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab on the ribbon again here, and this time choose Pictures. Here you can choose to get pictures from your computer, but also stock images as well. And this brings up that same pop-up window where now you've got a whole lot of beautiful photographs that you can choose from. And the same deal, you can scroll through, you can look through different categories, or you can search for something. It will come up with all the images that you can choose from, and you can select what you want and download it. And it's worth noting whilst we're here that it's not just that you have to go to there. You see across the top here, there are different tabs. So here I've got the images, you've got icons as well that you can choose from. There's also cut out people. So a whole load of people all on a transparent background. So you can use them to do scenario building and world building. And here you can search for different attributes or different activities. But you've also got across the top here, different people. So you can say, right, I want all the photos of Melissa and all of her come up. I want all the photos of Dennis and all of him come up, and so on and so forth. So now you've got all those different characters and you can see the different poses. And then just for completeness, you've also got things like stickers here, which are probably not going to be appropriate for any professional presentation, but you know, there they are. And then there are videos, which are nice, they're really good, but they're probably only useful for texture in a title slide. They're probably not going to help with storytelling. There are illustrations, which are beautiful kind of next level icons but they may not fit your brand. So just think carefully about using them. And then brand new, as of about 2 or 3 weeks ago, there are cartoon people where you can construct your own people. So you've got the different characters here that you can choose from, kind of fully made, or you can choose just heads and just faces and bodies. And you can start to match all of these things up to be able to create your own characters and your own scenarios. So a load of content all from within PowerPoint itself, which is great. And then one other thing that I think is often quite useful to note with these is that if I choose this, for example, I like this light bulb here. This is a really nice light bulb. I like the way that it kind of shines out, but I don't like that cog in the middle of it. Like, why is there a gear there? You can actually modify these by converting them to a PowerPoint shape rather than an icon. To do that, go to the Graphics Format tab, and over on the left-hand side here, you'll see this thing called Convert to Shape. And what that does is it breaks it down into individual PowerPoint elements so that I can now get rid of those bits, and I've now got a much nicer, neater light bulb. And then you can start to think about the way that you would use these icons to start building more visual stories. So here, for example, we can build out a relatively simple infographic using just a couple of icons. So we're going to talk about smart lighting, for example. And so, 4 in 5 light bulbs are LED, 2 in 5 houses use smart lighting systems. So we can get an icon of a light bulb, we can get an icon of a house. I'm going to use the copy drag from before, the control key and the shift key to then repeat that. So I've now got 5 of them in a line. And then we're going to try and highlight the 4 in 5. So let's select 4 of them, and they're treated just like PowerPoint objects. So I can go to the Format tab, and I can do something like change the fill color or change the outline color. You know what? In this one instance, I'm going to choose a shape effect called a glow, because that makes it look like the light bulb is really on. In this case, I'm going to break this apart into its individual elements to maybe emphasize the fact that the 5th light bulb in this instance, not being LED, isn't quite as good, isn't quite as bright, it's not shining. You know what, let's take it even further and maybe make it into a gray color or something like that, so that again, it's just that little bit different and that little bit clearer. That might be too much, but a nice way to highlight things might be, just something that's like an off-center circle, for example. So let's maybe choose that here. Let's maybe use the nice light thing. We're going to talk about 2 in 5 houses. So there we are. Send those to the back. And you've now got this nice setup here of highlighting 2 in 5 houses there. So all sorts of different things that you can do to try to bring your content to life to make it work well. Oh, and Mark, you said you don't have the graphics tab. The graphics tab will only appear if you have an icon there. So here I've broken this down from a graphic to a PowerPoint shape. It's ever so slightly different under the hood, but you get either the shape format tab or the graphics format tab if you have that object selected. You see, if I deselect it, that goes away. I don't see it. So it's a contextual menu. So if I insert an icon again, there we go. This is now an icon. It's an SVG file, which means that it generates the graphics tab. There it is. Okay, right. So we've got that as kind of options there. Now let's start using imagery. So when it comes to imagery, you can absolutely just use it decoratively. So it could be that you're getting nice, big, bold, beautiful imagery to make the slide look and feel really professional. So like this, for example, you can say, here's the office spaces that we create. This is the way that we impress clients. But I'm a really big fan of trying to use the images to help you to tell a story. And one really useful tool with images, but also generally for anything else, is to create custom masks. In this case, I can say, here we've got this kind of beautiful space that we've created to impress our clients. But what is it about this space that really draws the eye and really helps to impress people? Well, actually, we think, click, it's these things here. And so what I've done now is to be able to focus the audience's attention on just a few key elements of the image using a custom mask. Now, the way you do this is a little bit counterintuitive, so bear with me for a moment. And it's a 2-step process as well. So let's kind of go to a blank version of the slide and take a look at it. The first thing that I want to do is to create a custom shape around all of the objects that you want to highlight. So the mirror, for example, here, it's a square, it's a rectangle, but it doesn't look like it given the perspective of the photo. So you can create any custom shape you like by going to the Shapes gallery and then going to Lines. And second in from the right-hand side here is this little kind of squashed Pac-Man thing called a freeform. And what that does is it allows you to create any custom shape you want. If I select that, I'm going to click in the top left-hand corner of the mirror. I'm going to click and then let go of the mouse button. And then if I move the cursor, can you just about make out there that little thin blue line? That is going to trace the outline of any custom shape I want. If I now click on the top right-hand corner of the mirror and let go of the mouse button, now I've got a thin blue line across the top of the mirror, and it's now continuing to track the mouse. Now I'm going to click on the bottom right, I'm going to click on the bottom left, and I'm going to bring it back to the top left. When I bring it back near the start, it'll turn in a color, in this case blue, and now I've got a completely custom shape that maps around the mirror. I'm going to do the same thing again. Go to the Shapes, go to Lines, second in from the right-hand side, the squashed Pac-Man freeform there, and now I'm going to click around the desk. And the trick with this tool is that you absolutely have to click and let go, click and let go. If you hold your mouse button down and then move it, PowerPoint will think that you're clicking furiously, and you end up with a lot of squiggly lines, which looks really awkward and doesn't work very well. So in just a moment or two, I've now created these kind of custom shapes around the bits that I want to highlight. I said it's counterintuitive, and it kind of is because I've actually obscured the things that I want to highlight here, but don't worry, we're not done yet. Just so you can see what's going on, I'm going to change those to a brighter color, but you don't need to do that. What I'm then going to do is draw a rectangle that fills the entire screen, change the color to black, and use the Arrange tools on the Shape Format tab just to send this backwards through the layers so you can see those custom shapes in front of the black rectangle. What I'm then going to do is use a second tool in PowerPoint called Merge Shapes to manipulate those shapes relative to each other. If you select the black rectangle and then all the custom shapes that you drew, go to the Shape Format tab on the ribbon. Over on the left-hand side, you'll see this little Venn diagram thing here called Merge Shapes. And what that does is it gives you the ability to manipulate the shapes relative to each other. So if I choose Subtract down at the bottom, it'll cut away those yellow shapes from the black rectangle, giving me a view of the picture underneath, focused just on the mirror, the desk, and the glass wall. So you can see as I move this, it's just a rectangle with holes in those places. And if you then take this a bit further, because I don't like them just being isolated there, you can right-click on the black rectangle, go to the Format Shape tab on the ribbon, and over on the right-hand side under these fill options, there's this little transparency slider at the bottom. And if you slide that across, usually somewhere between 20 and 30% works well. Now what you've got is kind of visibility of the picture underneath, but your attention is very much focused on these bits here. And if I go into the Animations tab and just add in a simple animation, just a simple fade, now in slideshow mode, just saying, look, here's the space we've got, click, this is the area that I want to focus. And I think that this technique of custom masks works so well to be able to focus your audience's attention at the same time on the same thing. It's really useful when you're in person, and it's absolutely critical when you're doing stuff online like we are now, because otherwise you've no idea where people are looking. And in this case, it's everything in one go, but you don't have to do that at all. You know, if I just undo a little bit here, oops, there we go, just undo a little bit. What I'm going to do now is duplicate this slide a few times. I'm going to get rid of everything from the first slide, so I've just got the picture. On the second slide, I'm going to subtract just the mirror. On the third slide, I'm going to subtract just the desk. And on the fourth slide, I'm going to subtract just the glass wall. And so now I have this sequence over 4 slides where I can say, right, let's take a look at this office space. First thing I want to look at is the mirror, and you can talk about that. Next thing I want to talk about is the desk. Next thing I want to talk about is the glass wall. And so you're now taking people through things, and you know that everyone is going to be focused on the same thing at the same time, and they all have a shared experience. So it works really well to be able to build out this kind of stuff and allows you to focus your audience's attention on the things that are important. Right, so we are just over halfway. Just pause briefly to give everyone the time to take their breath. But also, any questions you have, please do let me know. As I said, you can ask at any time, but this is maybe a good opportunity to do it. Anything you'd like to recap or any things that you would like to cover in the remainder of the session, really happy to do so. Give you all 30 seconds or so to type in the chat. And Bhaskar, if there's anything that I've missed in the questions at this point, please do let me know.
Yes, Richard. Richard, just a kind of a general question. Richard, before you get into PowerPoint, do you normally sketch your ideas in a rough piece of paper before you get in to find ways of bringing that live in PowerPoint, or you go and explore that directly in PowerPoint? How do you kind of go through this creative experience?
Personally, it depends very much on the content. Sometimes you can look at a wall of text-based slide and immediately see, oh, it should be this kind of thing or that kind of thing, and this is an idea that I have for it. So you can start to build it very quickly because you have an idea in your mind. If I don't have an idea, if it's really complex or I can't quite figure it out, then yes, I will often sketch because it allows you to iterate things that much more quickly. And I would always try to have a clear idea of what visuals you want before you start building stuff in PowerPoint, because to go back and edit it later on is just that much more time consuming, that much less efficient. That means you probably don't want to do it. So yeah, try to have a good sense of what you want. The process that you use to get there is going to be very personal to you, but I would encourage you to do that before you enter into PowerPoint.
Thank you, Richard. I'll just wait for our friends to drop questions. Richard, I've noticed you haven't got a single bullet point in your slide, Richard, so far. So as you know, most PowerPoint presentations tends to have a lot of bullet points. Are you going to show us how we can convert some of the text into images, or what advice would you give us on that particular topic?
Why don't we do that exactly now? Brilliant segue to the next section. Okay, right. So if there are questions, this is definitely an opportunity for you to type in the chat. What I'm going to do is show you a typical slide, and I'd like you all please to type just super quickly in the chat what your initial impressions of this slide are. What do you think of that? Typical standard slide that we see all the time. Yeah, I think we're all agreed it's pretty terrible. Okay, so no one likes that kind of slide. We all know that it doesn't work. The question, though, is how do you improve it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that slide up again. I'm going to be quiet for a minute or two. I'm going to let you all read it, and then I would love you to type your ideas in the chat for how you would improve it using visuals. So brace yourselves. Here's the slide. Have a read. What would you do with that slide to make it work more effectively? So yeah, great ideas already. So you could split this out. Yeah, it doesn't need to be all on one slide. Absolutely, it's too much. There's no need for it there. You could use a graph, totally. So you could have a bar chart perhaps to be able to show kind of some of the key elements of it. So that you've got a sense of, what's important here. So let's build out something where you can maybe show that kind of 90% versus 10%, and you can say, look, there's clearly a difference. Or maybe you could also say, maybe here, representing the whole, you've got the 90% of the 10%, only these people are changing their behavior, which means that we've got a real problem here, and we need to do something to increase this percentage dramatically. So something like that, absolutely. What kind of images would you use? So you're talking there about the use of imagery. What would you have on there? Yeah, so you can have the people in it. Absolutely, you could do that. So we can say, look, we've got all these people here. They are, wasting a lot of their time. We can definitely focus on that. You could maybe, depending upon the audience and the objective, you could have a photo of money, for example, as well. We're essentially wasting a whole load of time and money on all of this. Maybe it's even more dramatic. Maybe it's money that's set on fire or flushed down the lavatory or something like that. There's all sorts of ways that you can do this really well. Absolutely, we can emphasize, Mark, we can absolutely emphasize things with arrows as well to just demonstrate the change, the things that we want to do, why this doesn't work very well. So loads of ways to improve it. What I typically do when faced with a slide like this, after I've woken up from it, is to think, is there a consistent element throughout that I can use and then manipulate that to be able to tell the story? And so as I read through this, I've got the 10% of those who attend, which is people, trainees, people, 90% of them people, individuals, and leaders. So this is really all about people. Is there a way for me to be able to get an image of people and then manipulate that in some way to be able to represent the story? And wouldn't it be great if I can get a photo of, say, 10 people and then have one of them represent the 10% and 9 of them represent the 90%? And so doing that, you think, oh, maybe I can combine it with the kind of techniques that we've just been looking at to say, well, how about this? Every year as an industry, we're spending billions of dollars in corporate training programs. It's too much, too nebulous to think about. So let's think about a real world scenario that we've all been in and we'll hopefully get back to again very soon. In just this one small room here, of all the time and effort it's taken people to get here and be there and all the things they're not doing whilst they're in this session, only she will get any measurable benefit from it. For everyone else, it's a complete waste of time. How impactful is that compared to the wall of text that you had to suffer through before? How much more impact is that going to make? And of course, we're not finished because that's just the first 2 paragraphs. The third one is then to say, and so what we need to do is change that by bringing in this SEA program so that everyone is actively engaged and they're all getting the results that they need from the training. So that kind of hopes to give you a sense of the type of process that you might go through to achieve this. The question then becomes like, well, how do you do it? Well, it's just building on all of the techniques that we've looked at so far. So if I go to a blank version of this slide here with just the photo, that if we go back through it again, I've got a photo here, but it's not one single photo. Actually, the way PowerPoint works is that you can manipulate things, but you can only manipulate it essentially in one way. So here I've got a grayscale photo, that's one. Next, I've got a blurred grayscale photo, which is actually a second image. I've got this color cut out of the woman, which is a third image. And then I've got the fourth image, which is the full color version. So there are actually 4 versions of the same image all layered on top of each other. And so once you think through that, again, it comes back to that point before of I need to think through what I want to do first before I build it, because layers in PowerPoint are really awkward to deal with. So what I'm going to do is build each of those layers in turn from the back to the front. So I'm going to select the picture and copy it so it's in the clipboard. And now I'm going to go through and do all of those different things, the layers, to create that sequence. So the first thing I want to do is to make this initial image grayscale, just to have that impact of the color change coming up to show the contrast. You can do that in PowerPoint by clicking on the picture, going to the picture format tab on the ribbon, and over on the left-hand side here, choosing color. This allows you to put all sorts of color washes over the image, including this grayscale one here. So nice and quickly done. There we are, layer 1. Then I'm going to paste using Control and V. And remember, it pastes just to the right and just below the original object. So I need to select both and use the alignment tools to make sure they're nice and neatly lined up. This technique of layering content is vital that you line stuff up. Otherwise, it's going to jump around as you go from layer to layer, and it's going to look really messy and it's going to be distracting. Right, the second layer was then the blurred version of the image. Again, you can do that in PowerPoint by going to the picture format tab on the ribbon, and this time over on the left, choosing artistic effects. This gives you about 20 different ways to completely ruin your image. I mean, why you'd ever want inverse neon, I have no idea. But up in the top right, second from the top there, is this thing called blur. And that's great because it, well, blurs the image. It takes the focus away from the detail of the picture, allowing you to look at one particular aspect of it. So I've got the blur. I'm also going to go back to color and do the gray color wash as well. So now I've got two images there. I'm going to paste again, Control V, once again, make sure that they are lined up. And then this time I'm going to use the freeform tool to create the color cutout of the woman. At this point, I'm going to zoom in, go to the shapes gallery, underline, second in from the right hand side, the squash Pac-Man, and now I'm going to just click around her. Now, unlike the mirror and stuff from before, which were all really neat straight lines, she of course isn't. There's all sorts of kind of weird and wonderful shapes going on here. So what I'm doing is just clicking quite a lot just to get a general sense of what the outline would be. Now, the nice thing with this technique is that you don't need to be massively accurate, partly because you're zoomed in, and so you don't really notice any kind of minor imperfections, and also because you're cutting her out against a photo of herself, which means that actually it should be okay, even if you mess it up just a little bit, it's kind of fine. So now I've got that there, it's a reasonable representation of her. I can use the merge shape tools to select the picture, then to select the yellow cutout, go to the shape format tab in the ribbon, and over on the left, the Venn diagram, merge shape tools there. This time I'm going to use one called intersect, and that keeps the overlap between the two shapes. So if I choose intersect, now you get the color cutout of the woman. At this point, super quick, select the blurred one, select the color cutout, go to animations, add an animation, choose a simple fade like that. And then finally, paste once more, Control V, line it up for the color image. You all know how to create a box. I'm not going to bother with that, but just so you can see what's going on here, I'm now going to add a wipe animation to this so that it's the same as the arrow. And now in what, 2 minutes or so, we've got this to say, look, we're spending loads of money on corporate training. Only she's getting any value, wasted time for everyone else. So what we need to do is SEA. What we need to do is SEA to make sure that everyone is then actively engaged. So really quick and really easy to build all of this out. Alex, great question there. When you layer and put these, when do you layer and when do you put on separate slides rather than have all the images in the same slide that builds? You could absolutely split this out over several slides. Yes, I come from an agency and we create presentations for people and we charge by the slide. And so we try to be fair with it. And so don't split it out over 4 slides when it could easily be one. So partly that's just my mentality. Also, there is something about a single slide, which means that presenters don't get worried. You know, if you turn up to a 20-minute presentation with 80 slides, that's okay if it's 20 minutes worth of material, but many people still fixate on slide count, which can be worrisome. Also, if you are creating a deck that lots of people are going to be using and pulling from and kind of redistributing, then if you've got slides split out over a story split out over a sequence of slides, they may not copy them all. So again, sometimes a single slide can be beneficial, but it's really like minor stuff. As I'll come on to in just a second, the morph transition requires you to have multiple slides. And so I suspect as morph becomes more and more prevalent, people will be used to larger slide counts, but not more time spent on it, and also figuring sequences of slides when they're copying from decks rather than just single ones. So it's because I'm old and because it's an old-fashioned way of doing it. But yeah, you could definitely do it over multiple slides. Right, so final thing to finish on, unless there are any questions, is let's talk about morph. So there are all sorts of animations that you can do in PowerPoint, and they're all fabulous, but they can take a bit of time. They can be a bit fiddly. Morph came along about 5 or 6 years ago and completely changed how you can create kind of complex, dynamic, animated sequences. Now, if you've never used it before, Morph is a transition in PowerPoint that allows you to move seamlessly from one slide to the next. So, for example, if I were to take this blank slide, draw a box on it here like that, go to the thumbnails on the left and duplicate the slide using Control and D, I can now on the second slide, take the box and move it to the right-hand side. So far, so basic. If you go to the transitions tab on the ribbon though, Over on the left-hand side is this thing here called Morph. So this is the transition that allows you to move seamlessly from one slide to the next. And if I click on it, if you go to slideshow mode, what PowerPoint will do is say, okay, this is the same box on both slides, just in a different place. It will then seamlessly morph from one slide to the next. And you think, oh, that's very clever. What if I were to do more than move it? What if I were to also maybe shrink it down and change the color? PowerPoint will then go, okay, it's the same box, but in a different place and a different size and a different color. I can handle that. And all of a sudden, you have a world of possibilities available to you. Like you can take a small green circle on the top left and morph it into a large purple circle on the bottom right. Better than that, let's use an image in the background and have the image move a little bit between each slide so it creates a parallax scrolling effect. Oh, wow, isn't that fabulous? And you think, oh, yes, but how does that help me communicate more effectively? This slide, however, might be a really good use case for Morph. It is an onboarding process for new starters. It's a great infographic, it's a lovely PDF, a wonderful printout, but it's a terrible slide because it's virtually impossible to see any of the detail. But maybe you can say, look, here's our overall onboarding process. What I want to do now is take you through the detail of it. Let's start with the strategy and planning, and then move across to the launch event and down to training and alignment, and so on and so forth, moving through the entire sequence, giving people the detail that they need before at the end, finally coming back and saying, and this is the overall process, and I'll share that with you as a PDF later. It's all just done using the morph transition. If I go back to the original slide here and zoom out, you can see there that the entire diagram fills the working area of the slide. But if I now go to the next slide, I've got exactly the same diagram, but just much bigger, with only a small portion of it on the visible area of the slide. And the morph transition will just say, okay, it's the same diagram, just larger and moved, and it will do all of that for you just in the transition with no need to mess around with anything else. Likewise with the next one, take this across here and you've got that there. So there's all sorts of different things that you can do with Morph. Here's another use case for it, where maybe you're talking about different development programs around the world. We've got this as an initial setup. And now what I'm going to do is say, let's look at each of those in detail. So we're now going to go into Peru. So we can now focus on this. The map is increasing. It's a vector graphic, so we can change the color of each of the countries. You can then bring in the detail. Then we're going to move across to somewhere else, and you can see the detail of that. Then we're going to move across to somewhere else and you see the detail of that. So all sorts of different things that you can do with it playing around. You can take it even further. You can use Morph to manipulate images in really interesting ways. I think a great use case for this is showing mobile screenshots. Mobile screenshots are often a real pain to have to show in presentations because you've got a landscape presentation view, and yet most mobile phone screenshots are portrait. And so you inevitably have to end up scrolling. You can do that with Morph. The way this works is by understanding how the crop tool works with photos in PowerPoint. So if I go to just a blank slide here with just a single photo on it, for example, if you go to the picture format tab on the ribbon and crop over on the right-hand side, you get these little black grab handles. And of course, I'm sure you all know you can use those to then crop away most of the picture. So you just got this left. Most people think of crop as a way to remove parts of the image. It's not entirely accurate because if you open crop again, the picture is still there. It's just hidden from view. So I like to think of crop as a window through which you can see the content underneath. Once you realize that, you say, okay, what I can do now is, if I just make this bigger so you can see it, I can duplicate the slide. On the second slide, I can take the same picture, open up crop. I'm not going to change the position or size of the window. I'm going to move the image behind that window so I now have a different view of it. And now with that in place, you have the same picture on both slides, just with a different crop view. If you go to the Transitions tab on the ribbon and choose Morph, it will now morph between the two positions, move in the image, and because the image hasn't been deleted, it will show you all the bits in between as well. So going back to the screenshot example, here I've got a screenshot there. You can see that it's cropped. It's this big long thing. I can copy that from one slide, paste it to the next, open up crop, move this around, and now you've got the ability there to have that scrolling effect with the morph transition applied, just like that. Another really neat thing about morph is that it also works backwards. So I can go from slide 2 back to slide 1, and it will morph like that as well. So really neat. You know what? Let's take it even further. Let's duplicate this and say, I don't just want to scroll, I also want to zoom in. Now I can use the white grab handles to increase the size of the image within the crop frame to now focus on the parts of the image that I want, maybe there like that. And now with the morph transition applied, this 3-slide sequence becomes, well, here it is. Let's scroll down, and now let's zoom in on the bit that we want. So really quick, really easy to be able to start building out some of these more visual sequences and to help your audience to follow along with the content and really understand. Right, so we are pretty close to the end of the session. So let me just wrap up super quick. And again, happy to answer questions as needed. But first of all, thank you so much indeed for joining today. I really appreciate it. And thank you to Bhaskar for hosting this session so wonderfully. Brief shameless plug for the final time. These are all the different things that we do at Bright Carbon. So we create presentations, e-learning, animations, infographics. If you would like any help, please feel free to get in touch. But more usefully for you guys as content creators, because we are creating all of this all the time, we love to come up with new ideas and techniques and share them. So if you go to the Bright Carbon website, brightcarbon.com, there you'll find a whole load of completely free resources and tutorials covering techniques exactly like this. Every Thursday, pretty much, we do a weekly webinar masterclass for 30 minutes covering these kinds of things too. That Brightslide add-in that I mentioned near the start, again, available for free from the Bright Carbon website, brightcarbon.com/brightslide. So please do check that out. And if anyone would like anything, please feel free to get in touch, info@brightcarbon.com, or you can just email me directly, richard.goring@brightcarbon.com, or follow us on the Twitter @brightcarbon as well, where we tweet out all sorts of useful, we hope, techniques and ideas too. So thank you so much indeed. Really appreciate it. As I said, we've covered a lot today. The idea was to inspire you so that you can pick up a couple of things that you can try to apply to your content. Bhaskar will be sending out the recording of this so you can listen back to it. And if you are listening, hello, thank you so much. But also you'll be able to get the PDF guide, the step-by-step instructions with links to short little snippets of video tutorial there as well, if that's more useful. So happy to stick around for any questions. But once again, thank you so much to Bhaskar for hosting all of this and the great community here. And yeah.
That was amazing, Richard. Thank you so much. I think especially the morph, I was totally gobsmacked at the very end. I mean, like, you were gradually building up how simple it is to move away from the bullet points into images, but that was really, really great. So, so as Richard mentioned, the slides and the recording will be sent in the next 24 to 48 hours. But for people who are just standing in for the last 1 minute, let me ask 2 questions. And that's part of the normal Scribble quiz. So if you can answer these 2 questions right, then you could pick any one of our workshops for totally free. And also, we'd love to see what you have learned from this as well. So if you are ready, just for the last minute, answer this very first question. Which key did Richard say press it to get a perfect figure? Go for it. Go for it. Yes, the answer is shift. So Dave, team will get in touch with you so that you could know the, so that you could pick one of our workshops. That was very close, Alex. So, but yeah, but next question. For the copy drag, which key did Richard use? Closer. Oh, I think, oh, a lot of you are getting the answer correct. So yes, Mark and Alex, we will give both to you. So the very first one, I think, team, if you are in, the winner is Dave. And for the second question, the winners are Alex and, oh, Alex and Mark. So if you want, there's one more question. Richard mentioned one thing is very tricky in doing with PowerPoint. While he was doing, especially the one that he had the bullet points, he was doing a particular thing, and that there was something that he did, which he said, this particular thing in PowerPoint, when you add with images, it's very tricky. What did it do that he said is tricky? The act. Do you remember the 3 bullet points that he did? Then he was adding one with the other. And he said, doing this in 1 slide or in 4 slides is always tricky. I know this is a complex question. It's just the layers. He mentioned that layers in PowerPoint is a tricky function, but thank you. Thank you for staying for the last minute or two. I know normally this is the time people go. So, we will share the future recordings. Thanks for joining. And the next webinar, obviously you will be getting a podcast version, teaching podcast version. If you are in proposal industry, questions on content libraries will be there. It's live in Scribble Talk. Then the next webinar is with Alessia Smatrova, so where we'll be talking about overcoming proposal writers block. It's on the 16th of December. So, proposal writers, at some point we hit a mental block and we think, what do we need to do? So Alessia is going to take 20 little pointers, cases, and she's going to talk us through. Alessia, as you know, is an APMP fellow, so I request you to come back on that. Otherwise, thank you for joining today. Thank you, Richard, for a great session. And thanks everybody for joining in, and stay healthy, stay happy, and we'll share everything else in the next 24 to 48 hours, and good winners as well. Thanks for participating.
Thanks so much, everyone.